I know in recent weeks, we've had some concerns regarding the Fulton County Jail and just reports that we have been hearing. So we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to actually speak with the Fulton County Sheriff, Patrick Labat. He so graciously joined us this morning. So I want to make sure that we give him ample time to answer any questions that we have. So please, if anyone has a question, please just raise your hand. And the sheriff said, he's here to address any concerns that we have and make sure that all of our questions are answered before he hops off. So with that, I'd like
just a brief statement, Linda.
Yes, sir.
Let me just once again thank the sheriff for being kind enough to speak with me. He and I have always enjoyed a tremendous relationship, and he's our sheriff, and let's give him every opportunity to address it. It's a horrible incident that occurred. But once again, let me say he's our sheriff, and we want to treat him like our sheriff and give him an opportunity to respond to this horrible tragedy that occurred. Could have occurred on any sheriff's watch, but it did on his. And so we in that spirit, let's receive him into, as we have across the years, into our forum. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. We actually just had a couple people just join. Cindy just joined, as well as Miss Helen. So I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and Miss Helen just connected to audio. Nice. Cindy.
Hi, everyone. Cindy Battles, Policy and Engagement Director, Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda.
Thank you. And I don't know if Miss Helen is in a position to talk or not, but Miss Helen Butler is the Executive Director for the People's Agenda. All right, with that, I'm gonna start with Miss Cece and then Faye with any, well, first, do you have any?
Lyndon, I'm sorry, I just was getting set up.
Okay, yeah, so we just finished introductions, Miss Helen. I also have to give it to Sheriff Labat to see if he had any opening statements, and then pass it to Miss Cecilia and then Faye Cofield.
Okay.
Well, certainly, as always, I appreciate the opportunity. I understand that there were some questions the last few meetings that I want to certainly be able to address. I do want to thank Reverend Motley and the whole team, right? You all have been extremely supportive in what we are trying to get done by way of transparency, by way of making sure that, look, we take an oath to treat people humanely. And so, as you can imagine, with a ship as massive as the Fulton County Jail is and has been for quite some time, we are turning things in the right direction. And so, again, I will yield. I want to make, as Reverend Motley would say, less of me and more of an opportunity for you all to have your questions answered, but certainly any concerns you have and opportunities to help us get better at what we do. We certainly receive all of that.
And Sheriff Labat, I'd just like to thank you for responding to Reverend Motley to come on our meeting. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Butler.
All right, Ms. Cece.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today, Sheriff Labat. My question, and as we asked you in this forum before, how do you feel about civilian oversight of law enforcement? And your statement at the time, which you thought it was an overreach, when things like this happen, when the citizens, especially this body, the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, who were founders helping get this board established, and us, Atlanta, being one of the premier citizen review boards in the country, we're often used for best practices for other jurisdictions throughout the country. When things like this happen, having a citizen review board in place is important. People feel that they have a voice. And I know you have said to us that you feel that that's an oversight, that you can basically police your own people. I'm wondering, how do you feel about the possibility of having civilian oversight of the Sheriff's Department?
First of all, thank you. Again, the Sheriff's Office I said that, and I remember the conversation specifically. And what I said was that I hold people accountable. And if you look at the top 3 individuals, I'd ask for their resignation. In this particular case, if you look at the investigations we started since January 1 of 21, when I took office, we have arrested 3 contractors and 6 employees, right? When you have a operation as massive as this is, there's going to be some internal strife. So there's a difference between oversight and allowing my team to function and hold people accountable. I still maintain that our goal is to hold people accountable and be transparent in doing so. So again, this is when you mention the board, right? You're talking about, I don't want to make any assumptions. You're talking about the Atlanta Civilian Review Board.
Atlanta Citizen Review Board, yes.
Right, and their jurisdiction is the City of Atlanta Police, as well as City of Atlanta Corrections. And so if you look at my track record, I was there when it started, and we developed a wonderful relationship of really allowing that second piece of oversight and what that looks like. And then even then, the recommendations that come from that, we have in many instances in the past, depending on what they were, again, followed our own rules and regulations and held people accountable. So we'll continue to do that. I will tell you, I had an opportunity on Friday to have breakfast with Chairwoman Hurst, Dorothy Hurst, and we had a great breakfast and a great conversation around what does it look like, what missteps on both sides were had, and how do we improve that? So quite simply, you'll see coming out in the next couple of weeks, there'll be a memorandum of understanding that allows unfettered access to the Civilian Review Board to come in and do exactly what you all were formed to do. And in doing so, again, in the spirit of transparency, my goal is to make sure where there are opportunities that are even not covered by the Civilian Review Board, that we get access to that information so that we become better because of it. So there is a solution on the horizon. We were supposed to meet this morning. Unfortunately, the executive director had an emergency. And so, that happens to all of us. So we will wrap that up in a bow and make sure. And the only ask that we have is like with any other major organization is that we know who the investigators are. We know what that looks like. We know who their supervisors are, so that we can do a better job of providing access.
And I do understand that. My only concern is it has been proven that the sheriffs can't police themselves. And that is my concern, that there has to be civilian, independent investigators. When something happens, the citizens feel more at ease knowing that there's independent, not internal investigator. So well, again, I would like you to reconsider that stance.
Again, let's make sure we level set that. In every situation that has been presented to us, in 9 specific situations, we've held people accountable. And the one thing that you and the people can trust is that where we are at fault, we're going to hold people accountable. We're not just like the Civilian Review Board. We are arresting individuals. So we're not making assertions and then making suggestions. We are holding people accountable. So I'd push back from that perspective. And so where there's an opportunity to have the review board come in and have another lens to look through, absolutely, I welcome that.
All right. Faye Cofield, followed by Tamara Orange.
Good afternoon, Sheriff Labat. I'm in a little bit of a different position than most people here because I'm a retired City of Atlanta police sergeant. So I go all the way back to when the jail was Jefferson Street, Wright Street, whatever you want to call it. And I travel and I have looked at jails throughout the world and even in remote parts of Africa. I have never seen anything like this. And it's deeply troubling to me, the response that we have gotten, because if this had happened in a nursing home or a private home or even a hospital, somebody would be in jail for criminal neglect. It is no way you can tell me that this man was in that filthy of a cell and he was on I understand, a psychiatric unit, and that he was in those conditions and nobody knew about it, and they didn't even have the decency to tell you. But I just have a couple of questions. Number one, has anybody been charged criminally in this matter? And most importantly, you keep saying you asked for people to resign. I can't understand why this was not prosecuted criminally, especially in light of the fact of what happened to Victor Hill. Did these people get their pension? And are you still using, most importantly, are you still using the same psychiatric or psychological services for this in the jail? And lastly, you received a large amount of money from Fulton County commissioners. How is that money being spent to physically clean up and reinforce the jail, considering you had one prisoner to break through the wall and go into the cell and critically injure another prisoner? You know, this is very concerning, because these are human rights violations that if they happened anywhere else in the world, we would be up in arms, and I'm up in arms about it here.
So that's a lot to unpack. So let me start here, because you go back to Jefferson Street and a long time with Fulton County. So you know this is not a new problem. You know that Jefferson Street, you know that when the jail was built, it was overcrowded the day we opened it. You know that the jail has been underfunded for more than 2 decades, more than 20 years. Sheriffs alike have been asking for additional funding. You know that I took 1,500 shanks in 5 wheelbarrows to the Board of Commissioners, asked them for $211 million because they had not been given the truth at what it takes to run a facility of this size. You know that I've asked to outsource and get 500 people off the floor so that we can treat people humanely. Now, with specifics to the case, please understand it is still under litigation, and we are still back and forth with the medical care company and understanding what that looks like on a larger scale. So there's litigation to be had. But here's something I want you to really digest. And as a former sergeant, you certainly get this. Do you remember several years ago when the Rashard Brooks incident happened, and as horrific as it was, the protests started taking place, and then there were 6 Atlanta police officers that were fired without due process. And in that due process, they ended up getting their job back. They got their job back, they got back pay, and many of them are still working today. And it is certainly horrific. Let me not make any excuses. It is horrific what happened, how it occurred. And so we are literally, we just maybe 2 weeks ago, we got the report back from the Atlanta Police Department. We are wrapping up our investigation. We cannot charge anyone criminally until we get all the facts. And since then, people have resigned. And ultimately, we will turn this over to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations and the Attorney General if he sees fit beyond that to press charges. So again, it's a lot to unpack, but it is not a new phenomenon. We have been, again, overcrowded. The facility is falling apart. Here's the difference, and this is what I hope the audience understands. Prior to 1/1/21, when I took office, all this was being swept under the rug. I came in the first week I came in, I brought every commissioner that would come in and had them walk through the facility. You had Commissioner Khadijah Abdul-Rahman come out and say, look, this is a third world country. So it didn't become a third world country in less than 900 days. And then, like everybody else around the country, we are struggling to retain people, recruit people, and the Board of Commissioners has done a really good job of helping us do that. So again, it is certainly a tough position to be in. And you bring up a really good point, Ms. Cofield, with respect to oversight. So we are now still in negotiations with the medical care company, which will involve some level of an external oversight that will, on a weekly basis, make sure that we're getting ultimately what we are paying for. And so again, there are opportunities that as we get ready to move forward, that will allow us to really lean in and better treat people. Keep in mind now, this is not, and when I say it's not a new phenomenon, I got pushback from some people on this call, as well as the public, when I wanted to move 500 people 3 hours south to a better maintained facility. So there's a lot of give and take in what this looks like. Again, and let me announce this, right? So everybody, this may answer a couple of questions as well. One of the things about being transparent is you end up getting more questions, but we created just a week or two ago an inmate advocacy unit. And so that unit as a whole, their responsibility is to outline and identify the number of individuals that have been there the longest and figure out where the cog in the machine is, so ultimately we can get them through court. So I know you understand, Sarge. I know you understand that the jail is the middle. Well, you're shaking your head, but let me finish. The jail is not the court system, and the jail should not be a place for mental health. And so as we move through this system, the jails have become the mental health facilities across Georgia. And so our goal is to make sure that we get people to and from court as quickly as possible. And that is, in many instances, up to the judge. So to that end, there are a lot of opportunities as we get ready to move forward. So we can, you look like you wanted to say something, Sarge. So I didn't want to.
I'm sorry, Sheriff Labat, but you did not answer my question. You didn't answer any of them. And with regard to jails, okay, let's be clear. There are a lot of jails in this country. One of them is in Clayton County.
Yeah, let's ask the question. Let me answer.
Okay.
Please.
Why was you say that you allowed these people to resign? Why did you allow?
No, they were put on administrative leave and then they resigned. So understand, just like with the Rashad Brooks case, and that's why I gave that answer. You cannot fire somebody without all the facts. You know that. As a sergeant, you know that.
Resignation.
You know that. I'm sorry?
You said
I asked for their resignation and put them on administrative leave. So the ones that resigned, etc. So again, understanding civil service. Yeah, Sarge, come on now. You know that you just can't fire people without civil service that have civil service protection.
On administrative leave pending termination.
No, that's not how it works. It is put on administrative leave pending investigation. So let's be honest. Let's be honest with the conversation. What's the next question?
Tamara and then Ray.
Good morning again. Good afternoon. My question is going to be twofold. But let me first off say that I'm a retired warrant supervisor for the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office. So I worked inside the jail for 16 years prior to my retirement. So I understand the ins and outs of what it takes to actually run a jail. My first question is, Sheriff, I've heard you say that the your three top people were allowed to resign. And my concern is, with you being the head of the agency, I haven't heard you say one time, and I could have missed it, but I haven't heard you say that ultimately the buck stops with you. And I get that you have people in place, but as a supervisor, I was always told that you inspect what you expect. And if you expect the jail to be running a specific way, then why is it that you were not on top of your people who should have been making sure that things were done effectively and efficiently. Secondly, in regards to the Atlanta Citizens Review Board, because I am the vice chair, I am concerned about, I know you said that you spoke with our chairwoman, Ms. Hurst, but my question is, if there was an issue with the investigators coming in, then why was something not put in place stating that giving them like a target date by this day, this is what we expect to come when the investigators come to speak with somebody? Because if the wagon has been rolling for the past 14, 15 years, why is it an issue now?
Okay, so let me start here. With respect to you missing the statement, my very first statement was the buck stops with me. I'm the sheriff. This is where we are. I also reiterated the fact that we have 2,000 warrants to be executed, but I don't go execute the warrants, right? So those are circumstances by which, as you put it, right, you hold leaders accountable. And so I've said that. I've had an opportunity to meet with the family. And so again, this is not one that leadership is tough, right? So this is me accepting that piece and understanding that we have to figure out, as our board of commissioners have said, how we get ready to move forward. Specifically with the Atlanta Citizen Review Board, we got to be fair at what was put out and what was not put out and how it was done. We got the actual certified letter last week. I didn't even know it was a problem. And as I told Mr. Reed, as I told Councilman Lewis, and as everybody on here knows, if you have a problem, you can call me directly and we solve problems. It is as simple as that. As Ms. Hurt, as Chairwoman Hurts and I talked about, it shouldn't have come to this on both sides. And so there's enough culpability to go around, but right now we are moving forward. And ultimately, when you change leadership and people don't know, you get some miscommunication. So over 15 years, there has never been a formalized process put in place. And so once it was recognized that that is the case, we are putting a formalized process in place so that we don't have these issues.
All right, Ray, followed by Sheena Robertson.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Sheriff, for coming on the call. So, as you said, the jail has been called a third world country. As far as the issue of bed bugs is concerned, how long has that, have you known about that being an issue, and what has been done in the past to try to rectify that situation? And also speak to the inmate advocacy, because it doesn't seem like the public is able to really communicate with the inmates. So speak to the inmate advocacy program that you have and how the community can interact with that program.
And thank you, and good to see you, Ray, or good to talk to you. Listen, and you bring up really good points. We had 2 failed attempts at really decontamination, and then my team got me involved. We spent $500,000, and we did a really, really thorough job of making that happen. But and someone mentioned earlier, the additional monies that we have gotten, that is for every two weeks or twice a month, having a clinically cleaning company come in and make sure on where our medical unit is and our mental health unit is that we actually do that. So again, really the momentum of having a good partnership with our board of commissioners, getting those additional funding lines to make sure that we can do that ultimately is our goal. With respect to and so I hope that answered that, Ray, from the perspective that we've done it twice before. It failed. We spent $500,000. It was extremely successful. The other thing that we're doing and all this is uncharted territory, right? These are things like COVID, right? We didn't know were existing until we knew it existed. And so to that point, we have mass health checks that are done 2 ways. On May 8th, we had our entire command staff walk through the facility, outline not just maintenance issues, but lay their eyes on every single individual, all 3,600 detainees that were in jail at the time, so that we can, again, start to address their issues. Specifically with the inmate advocacy unit. That unit is designed not necessarily for communications from outside resource. And if there's anyone on here that needs to get in touch with a detainee, please feel free to either call me directly. My team hates that, or you can go through our sheriff's app, and we make it easy. So you can have tips, you can have questions, and we certainly can help from there. But let me expand upon the inmate advocacy unit. We pulled 229 misdemeanors last week or week before last to understand where their charges are. Why is it taking so long to get to court? What is it we need to present? Many of them have been reset time over time over time. Many of them reset to the point that, or the case put off long enough that had they gone and taken a plea, and I'm not advocating that, but had their case been adjudicated, they would be in jail less time than they are currently. So at that particular time, with the help of our solicitor Gamage, we released 87 people. 24 of them had an actual hold for other counties. And so to that end, we are continuing to do that. But here's the fallback to that. 48 hours to 72 hours later, there were another 57 misdemeanors that had been arrested. So we got to keep in mind, the largest county we have, we end up in a situation where everybody continues to bring us individuals that are misdemeanors, state charges, as well as felonies. So we are working with both Solicitor Gamage, Madam DA, and other resources, even the Public Defender's Office, to make sure people have representation, which is another problem from them having the right resources.
You need like social worker services as well. Like who's in there actually, I mean, like real advocacy, like really talking to them. Because I know that you have a lot of violent crime in the jail. One brother was tortured on live. I know you heard about that case. So
yeah, well, that wasn't our jail. That was not our jail. So we had that was a State Department of Corrections, and so we talked to the commissioner there. They have done their investigation, but that was not our facility.
All right, Ms. Robertson, followed by Sherry, Rasheen, and then Tamara.
Hi, everyone. Like I introduced myself earlier, I am the investigations manager with the Atlanta Citizen Review Board, and I have been with the agency for 14 years. So I just want to give some background on our process with that when we go out to interview people, inmates at the jails, at the Atlanta Detention Center, as well as the Fulton County Jail. And I also want to just provide some facts as to what happened that led to this particular incident. Sheriff Labat, I know that you said in your opening, you stated that there were some mishaps on behalf of both parties. And I also read your statement that you provided to the media saying that, and this all came about because an investigator made an unannounced visit to the jail. Let me just provide some facts on what actually happened. So first of all, our process has been, this has been our process from the beginning for the past 14 years. We would contact the designated in person at the Fulton County Jail, or if it's at the Atlanta Detention Center, our designated person with corrections. We will then, that would be an email request, which is in writing that we would send over. We will let them know that we have an inmate that we want to interview in regards to a complaint they filed. against the Atlanta police or correction officer. We would then propose a date that we would like to come to the facility to do the interview. That request is then, we get a response back saying that our request has been approved and the date that we could come to visit the inmate. On the date in question, we had 3 inmates that were at the Atlanta Detention Center that had filed complaints. At the time, we didn't know that they were Fulton County detainees. However, we still followed our process and we sent an email over to our designated person that's over at corrections, advising them that we have these 3 inmates that we would like to come to interview on such and such date. That was on April 7th. On April 11th, we got a phone call from our designated person at corrections saying that those 3 inmates were Fulton County detainees and that she was awaiting confirmation or permission from someone from your staff to let us know when we could come and interview those detainees. We then got, that same day, we then got a call from Miss Amelia Joyner, who is your chief counsel, that told us, that our investigator, that in order for us to come to interview that inmate, those inmates, we needed a court order or written approval from the inmate's defense attorneys. Now, we have never, ever scheduled an unplanned or showed up at any facility to interview anyone. We are professionals. We do our work with integrity, and that's not how we operate. Now, I want to also give you a little bit more information, Sheriff Labat. We was actually at your jail on April 5th, where one of my investigators interviewed an inmate there. We followed our process that we've always followed. We contacted your sheriff, one of your sergeants, in writing, asking them, could we come in to interview a particular inmate? And that was granted, and my investigator was over at the Fulton County Jail and performed that interview. I have all of this in writing. So we don't do, so that narrative that you have out, which is very disconcerting to me, as well as my investigative team, that we just showed up at the jail to interview someone. That's not what we do. That's not how we've ever done business. We've always followed this process that we've had in place with the Fulton County Jail, as well as the Atlanta Detention Center. So I just wanted to clarify the record. I don't understand, that this, I don't know where that information that you got was given to you, but like I said, everything that I have that I'm explaining to you is documented, and I have that in writing.
Well, let me say thank you. And again, as Chairwoman Hurst and I talked about, we are going to put a MOU in place so that anyone that is at any desk, in any facility, and it will cover all of our facilities, will no longer have this problem. Again, it was a bit disingenuous for the executive director and a couple other people to jump out in the media and not reach out to me specifically and have this conversation. So I receive everything you said. I would like to see some of that information as we get ready to prepare to move forward. But this shouldn't have been a problem from the beginning, and I appreciate that. So we will we'll continue to improve.
Sherry.
Hi, Sheriff Labat, how are you?
Hey, good to see you. How are you?
Hi, I served on the Atlanta Citizens Review Board for 7 years, and I chaired it for 2. So I know a little bit about process and the great work that the Atlanta Citizens Review Board does. And it's good that you say that you have an inmate I think you said review board or something of that nature,
Inmate advocacy unit. We just put
advocacy
together.
unit. But
Correct.
everybody knows that it takes a village. So the people on the outside who can serve as a citizens review board for your office would be the best regarding transparency, and to think that systems that are meant to make sure that everyone gets their civil rights done should never be not allowed. If the inmates could do it themselves, they would already be doing it, whether it was official or unofficial. So like others have mentioned, I do hope that in the future that you will embrace that across the nation. The police organizations that have citizens review boards, I think you will find the data that says that they have higher morale, they have less turnover, they have less incidences, because transparency is everything. So if you're doing what you're doing right, the review board will report that. So that's my statement. But I put my questions in the chat. And basically it says the Southern Poverty Law Center and others have asked that you give the details of how many people in Fulton County are nonviolent offenders who are waiting for a court date, who simply cannot afford their bail. So obviously you're the sheriff, you know how many people that is, right?
No, it changes every day. That's
Okay,
why that's why we
idea.
created, right. That's why we created the inmate advocacy unit. That's why, and I know you get this because we've had these conversations in the past. That is why the DA and the solicitor are charged with really, they are the crux to making these systems flow, as well as the judges. And so as a sheriff, I don't have the leeway of saying this charge can or cannot stay, does or does not exist. We simply are the mechanism to make sure that individuals appear in court.
Correct.
And
My
so
question was, how many people is that?
we have 3,600 individuals.
No, how many people are
and again,
nonviolent offenders?
Again, so that is a much deeper dive. And what I mean is, when we pull just the misdemeanors, their misdemeanors, again, if this was 2 weeks ago, there were 229 individuals that were misdemeanor cases, right? But when you delve into it, they also have felonies, or some have holds, some have other charges. Again, it's to say that they're nonviolent. What is nonviolent? You look at some of the judges and they consider, if you weren't at home at the time somebody broke into your house, that's considered nonviolent. It just depends on the judge and depends on those circumstances. What I can tell you is that every individual has seen a judge and a judge has made that decision. And so ultimately that falls outside the realm of the sheriff's office. What we are doing is taking an extra step to advocate for detainees, especially those that have been there longer than they may have had a case that could or should have been adjudicated. The system is broken. It is not, the jail is absolutely in a place of disrepair and we need to fix it. But
So is it true that
Yes,
there
ma'am.
was an inmate who was a former detainee that was in for several months who had a $25 bail?
No, that is absolutely not true. I've heard that. I went to look, I would have paid that person's bail. I absolutely have gone through and seen and heard that. That is absolutely not true. And so again, that's why we developed this inmate advocacy group, this inmate advocacy unit. It will have 8 people and to your point, right? If you know some people in our community that can be a part of this and want to come work for the sheriff's office, I absolutely welcome that. So it is an opportunity for us to get in, understand why people have been there for months, if not years. I got one individual that's been there almost 9 years. And that is simply because his case keeps getting reset. There's a mental health issue there. And these are judge issues. Let me please, let me invite each of you to join our Court Watch, right? Madam DA Fonnie Willis has done a great job with Court Watch. And that underscores an opportunity for you all to see what the system looks like that we've been fighting and trying to deal with for quite some time. You don't have this problem in Cobb. You don't have this problem in Gwinnett, because the system continues to churn. And COVID absolutely shut the system down. I'm at a point now that I'm seeking legal advice to just stop taking misdemeanors just because we're so overcrowded. But we've been overcrowded for decades. And so to that point, it is, look, and I have to applaud some of the Board of Commissioners and the administration. They've added judges, right? Senior judges, to try and speed up this churn, to try and create an environment where people have a due process and an opportunity to go to court.
So I see that you have other hands. So I just want to close on these last 2 points. And if you can give a really, really short answer, that will be appreciated. And one of them is, isn't it true that everyone who gets booked into jail gets a shower? Because if that's the case, how did this person die of bed bugs? And then the other thing is that, isn't it true that the system really is broken and that the young man that died of bed bugs should not have been arrested in the first place?
Okay, so again, let's work backwards. You can't say that, you being plural, can't say that the individual shouldn't have been arrested because somebody made an outcry, whether it was the officer and they made a decision, or whether somebody called the police. So somebody made an outcry. So I can't really look at or unpack that piece with respect to should he or should he not been arrested. The fact is, he was arrested. To your first question, everybody gets a shower, and that shower is medicated. However, we don't, when you come in, we don't physically shower you. And so there have been instances where people have come in with lice. And ultimately, what we have learned from this is that there's a better opportunity, a better way for us to treat individuals. And so now we have a particular set of nurses that go around to 3,600 people and try and determine how we best solve some of those issues that are ongoing. And so we're not sparing any dollars and cents. We spent, again, $500,000 to eradicate the actual inhumane situation we had with respect to bed bugs. And we will continue to do that. We had the foresight to say and ask for. See, again, I don't want people to misconstrue what took place. I took a plan to the Board of Commissioners, and it was $211 million, so that we understand, so we could level set and know whether a jail of this magnitude, a sheriff's office of this magnitude, knew what it took to run it. We didn't get that kind of funding. And so now we're getting different bits and pieces as emergency funding to go after some of the things that we predicted would happen. And so I certainly, I appreciate it. And Ms. Williams, as always, we can continue the conversation a little later. And I'll make sure my number's in the chat. Mike, if you'll put my number in the chat, I'd appreciate it.
All right, and since we're going into the second half of the meeting, we're running shorter on time, starting to limit everyone to just one question. Rasheen Hunter is next, followed by Tamara, Marcus Coleman, Miss B, and then John Taylor.
Sheriff Labat, my question is, what other jurisdictions are inmates being housed in outside of, the jail at Rice Street or Fulton County Sheriff's Office-owned facilities, such as ACDC or other county facilities? And are the inmates not afforded the same rights or the different rules of those jails or detention centers? So, for example, with the Atlanta ACDC, should inmates, because I would assume that there will be Atlanta correction officers who are dealing with those inmates, even though they may be under the custody of Fulton County, should they not be afforded the same rights and privileges under the same guise of oversight that the Atlanta Citizen Review Board already covers. So why would there need to be a new policy in place if they're at that facility and there's already oversight from the ACDC and the Atlanta Citizen Review Board?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the question, Mr. Hunter. And let me answer the first one. We have individuals, so there's 159 counties across the state of Georgia. I personally wrote a letter to each sheriff asking them whether you have 1 bed, 10 beds, or 1,000 beds. We want to lease them if possible. So specifically, Atlanta City Detention Center, Fayetteville, Cobb County, Oconee County, and Forsyth, where we have individuals now, and we're working on a few other places to just simply get people off the floor and treat them in a humane fashion. And with respect to the policy, understand there's no policy in place from the sheriff's office. There has not been. There are thousands of policies that govern the sheriff's office, and specifically, Mr. Hunter, what I want to do is put a memorandum of understanding in place so it matters not where we house an individual. The Atlanta Citizen Review Board has equal and access to all of them.
My question though was that there's already a policy in place between ACDC and the Citizen Review Board.
No. So there's a policy in place between the Atlanta City Review Board or its charter and how its oversight. Its oversight is the Atlanta Police and Atlanta Corrections. And so over at ACDC, they're not under, unlike Cobb, right? So when we take somebody to Cobb County handles all of their care and custody. At ACDC, we actually employ staff that handles that, so they don't fall under the same auspices. I want to create a memorandum of understanding so that we have none of these problems moving forward. And that, by the way, was at the conversation and a suggestion, a very good suggestion from Chairperson Hurst.
All right, Tamara.
I'm sorry to keep coming back. Let me first say that may have been a suggestion by Chairperson Hurst, but that is not anything that has been presented to the entire board in order for us to vote on. First, secondly, I'm having a problem understanding, or if maybe you can help me understand. It sounds to me like you're saying, even though the Fulton County inmates are in the Atlanta City Detention Center, it's like they're just completely separate. You all have separate employees watching those inmates.
They are.
Okay. So my next question is, with you being there at ACDC, that's basically an Atlanta facility. In the event that something happens, God forbid, to a Fulton County inmate in that facility, where would the liability fall?
There is no liability.
In the Atlanta facility, I mean, who's to say that they won't come back and try to sue Atlanta because that's where they were, even though they are a Fulton County inmate? How is that going to work out?
Yeah, Tamara, I appreciate that. All that has been flushed out from stem to stern. So there is no liability on the city whatsoever. And so where there are opportunities for interaction between ACDC staff and Fulton County detainees, that simply does not happen. And so this has created a better environment. I've had women and men alike just talk about, again, the condition of the facility, how much more humane. Please understand, and this is a really good point that you bring out. We moved from the South Annex where we had 9 women in one room. Now there's at max, there's 2 people in a room. And so the space is there, the opportunity to have a more clean environment is there, and that's our goal. And so ultimately, we want to make sure that we provide the best services we can. And that is by far a more clean facility, a more humane facility, and it is one we're leasing and not one that we are, unlike Cobb. And that's why I mentioned that earlier. We drop people off at Cobb. We drop them off at Oconee County, Forsyth County, et cetera. One in hopes to get them off the floor, but ultimately we control and manage, if you will, the Atlanta City Detention Center, where the units that our detainees are in.
All right, Marcus Coleman, followed by Ms. B, and then John Taylor.
Sheriff and Madam Executor and Reverend Motley. Reverend Motley, who I have a lot of respect for, sir, overflowing amount of respect. But I only have one question, but allow me just to state some facts. It's troubling how it appears that as long as we say this was tragic, this was horrific, like that makes it okay. It's criminal. LaShawn Thompson, and as an advocate for prisoners' rights, long before LaShawn Thompson was severely dehydrated. LaShawn Thompson was severely malnourished. LaShawn Thompson, who suffered from schizophrenia, didn't have a trace of medication in his system. LaShawn Thompson died from compensated schizophrenia, meaning he just went mad in a cell. That was horrific. That was, here's the point I'm making. Sheriff Labat, I told you personally, sir, I have no qualms with you as Patrick Labat, but as sheriff, I first started publicly speaking out against you and Mayor Dickens for the ACDC that we're speaking about here. I mean, it's been said, sir. I mean, I think the figure was $25. You said that's absolutely not true. The bottom line is we know that there are people that are in jail who can't pay a low amount of bond. This is the bottom line. $25, $50, $100, $200. There are people that should not be there. And people like myself felt like instead of adding to mass incarceration, reversing decisions of a previous mayor, that you would take a fine-tooth comb through that jail, remove the people that are low-level offenses or can't pay their bonds, and your problem of overcrowdedness is solved. Now, I'm not trying to act like it's a simplistic situation. As I told you, sir, I know you inherited a lot of the problems, but let's just be real here, guys. If Sheriff Patrick Labat was a Caucasian male, most of these people on this call would be demanding his resignation. We cannot allow people who look like us to get passes when they are responsible for human rights violations by way of the United Nations statute. I guess it's troubling when you have a relationship with this family, and the Sheriff Labat, I know you sat down with the family, but when you have a relationship with this family, thousands of bed bug bites and lice. This is being called the worst in custody death in the history of these yet to be United States, right here in Fulton County, right here in Atlanta, right here in the birthplace of Dr. King. And I've been a long time ally of the People's Agenda, and I always love the fact how you guys you allow people to come in and defend themselves or speak their case. Some things are a line in the sand. We've got COs, as Sergeant Cofield stated, chiseling through the wall like Shawshank Redemption. Do you know how much time it takes to chisel through the wall to get to another unit, another unit, and critically stab somebody? Then we got COs sneaking in contraband and allowing so-called inmates to film them while they sucking on fingers and Lord knows what else. We've got This is in the vein of that accountability that I'm hearing Sheriff Labat talk about. It's easy to hold folks accountable when they're doing egregious, newsworthy stuff. You've got COs that have been associated with rival gangs, popping the locks on the doors of so-called inmates to be assaulted. You've got mail, according to Patrick Labat, false attorney names coming in with letters coming in with dope on them. I mean, you've got fraud. You've got COs that are inflating hours to get more money and signing. Listen, all of this happened on your watch, sir. So my question. Someone asked, did you understand that the buck stopped with you? And you said, yes, that's the first thing you said. Well, sir, leadership that I know of And again, sir, this is nothing personal about Patrick Labat. This is the
It is.
jailer, Sheriff Labat.
It is.
First
It
of all,
is.
you can't tell me what my feelings are.
Right.
You might
And
not
you
like what I have to say, but
and
sir,
Marcus
I mean,
and Mr. Coleman, you can't tell me.
I'm asking my question. I'm done. I'm asking my question.
Okay.
I'm done.
Hold on.
Answer your question. Ask your question after your diatribe of misinformation. But go ahead.
I don't think I misquoted or misspoke at all. And in the spirit of Reverend Motley, sir, I'm being respectful to the man, but allow me to ask my question.
Please, I appreciate it.
Since you understand that the buck stops with you, and there was one individual, as you explained to me, that was able to receive his pension since he was able to resign. But since the buck stops with you, sir, the question is, understanding leadership, will you submit your resignation since the buck stops with you and fall on your own sword instead of using people up under you to take the accountability that you so righteously speak of? So will you resign, Sheriff Labat?
Mr. Coleman, I absolutely will not. And so let's be clear. I am the reason, right? The Fulton County Sheriff's is as transparent, the Sheriff's Office is as transparent as it is. There's nowhere in 20 years that people have had a behind the scenes look from day one at the atrocities and holding people accountable. So where you view it as something that has been taking place and nothing has been done, I view it as me fighting for the people that work there. In nowhere in the history of law enforcement has law enforcement gotten a 36% pay raise without union representation. Are you going to have some bad apples? Absolutely. The same fight you fought in South Fulton against those bad apples, we fight every single day. And I am holding those individuals accountable. So this is where you view, you being plural, have an opportunity in this day of social media, right? You have this rush to incriminate. We're in a space where we are holding people accountable. So I hope that everybody else can hear me. I don't think Mr. Coleman can hear me. I
can hear you now, sir. I couldn't hear you for several seconds.
And I appreciate that. So my point being is, again, I'm not going to resign because I was elected to do a job. And that job, we are holding people accountable, as we talked about in person. And here's what I will do, though. I will invite you in, right? And I've said this, so that you can be a part of the solution and understand what we're working with. That's why I said, listen, this is, I brought every commissioner in that would come in to understand from day one that this is an atrocity that we need to fix. People chiseling through a wall, we have done some things out. Look, you wouldn't be able to chisel through the wall if the building wasn't 30 years old, right? You look at ACDC, you look at how it is run, which I ran for 10 years, right? It is a different way of thinking. We have to embody that. You're absolutely right. We can't warehouse people. And so when I came in, the first thing we did was try to understand why the court system is holding people longer than they would have been in jail had the cases been adjudicated. That's why we created the Inmate Advocacy Unit. And that unit's responsibility is to bring forth this information so that we can try and stand up for those individuals. And we are partnering with the Bail Project. So anybody that has a bail less than $5,000 have an opportunity to get out of jail. And let me tell you, and since we're running around telling people or giving out misinformation in some instances, right? I've had conversation after conversation with individual families that have said, and I've said, listen, his bond's only $1,000. Let's go to a bonding company. And the exact response is, Sheriff, we can't do anything with him. We want him to stay there. We want them to, look, we will work with your team to try and get them some mental health help, right? We don't want them out on the street. And so there's this crux of give and take that you understand clearly that we ultimately are in the middle of the conversation. And so as sheriff, I don't have the autonomy to say, you and you can go home, right? There's a court order that has to be in place and a court process that has to be in place. And somebody made an outcry to have these individuals arrested. So again, Mr. Coleman, as always, we can continue this conversation at any point.
Can I respond to your, can I respond to your invitation? I just want to respond to your invitation that you said,
Yes.
sir, you said, sir, that, you know, you welcome, you know, to invite me in to be part of the solution. Well, I just want to make sure we're clear in my closing. LaShawn Thompson didn't die 3 months ago, y'all. LaShawn Thompson died in September of last year. All this getting out in front of it is malarkey. I mean, we should be completed with the investigation by now. So I do feel like I am being part of the solution, sir.
I got it.
I'm
Hold
closing.
on.
I'm closing.
Marcus, we got other people.
I'm closing. 10 seconds, sir. I do feel like I am part of the solution, and part of the solution is cleaning house of those who look like us but don't have our best interest at heart. Thank you.
All right, Ms. B, followed by John Taylor, and then Kay Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Labat, for being here. But I am very concerned because you said yourself, the buck stopped with you. And you also said the system is broke. And you said you reached out and the commissioners came in, they gave increases for salary and everything, but people are still sleeping on the floor. And since this man died last September when he came in there, and nobody ensured that he had a shower, you had no oversight to make sure that he had a shower, and he dies of bed bugs and lice. I can't understand that for the life of me, and people are still living on the floor when you should have reached out immediately to the community who put you there. So this is what I need. Come help me. But you refuse the Citizen Review Board. That would have been a help, a start to publicize the position you were in. But you didn't accept the help that you could have gotten. And there are United Nations rules for prisoners. So you needed to have let all of us know, not just Atlanta City Council, and the Citizen Review Board would have been really willing and able to help you. So you got to reach out. You got to take more responsibility than you are. You're supposed to have godly leadership, not just leadership. How can I say I love Jesus and I want to go to heaven if I don't love my brother and my sister? You see people laying on the floor and you don't reach out. If one person could do something or say something, we could help one or two. It's better than them dying and you getting the blame for it. Because whether it happened good or bad, it's your watch. And you need to do something about it now.
So thank you. I appreciate that. But let's be totally clear about the conversation. I have asked anybody that wants to step in and be a part of the conversation from day one, when we had 600 people sleeping on the floor, that the Fulton County Sheriff's Office needs your help. And so to that point, to that very point, I'd love to have you come and be a part of that voice while you see 500 or 600 people sleeping on the floor. And so again, let's not bend to social media. Let's not bend to media. Let's figure out what the solutions are. And so, Ms. Williams, I'd love to have you in here this week.
I'd love to. I can't come this week because this week is already taken, but I could come next week. Okay. And I'd like to see what you're doing.
And then let's do that.
I'd like to see these people. You set up a date and I will be there.
All right. So, Mike, let's make sure we got Ms. Williams' information, because I want you then to help follow up with the Board of Commissioners and the City of Atlanta City Council so that they understand, right, on this subject and many more, unless we get the training, unless we get the facilities to treat people more humanely, we simply are where we are. And we are fighting.
It seemed like you running a mental institution rather than a jail.
And you're absolutely correct. And you do know that listen, let me tell you, that is such a profound statement. Since the state of Georgia has shut down mental institutions, we have a circumstance where over 54% of our individuals have had some concern and contact with mental health. And so you could not be more correct about that. And jails aren't mental health facilities. We aren't built for that, right? We try and fill the gap. But that now I'm gonna need you to work with me and go beyond the city council, and we need to go to the state house. And we need to be in lockstep and get people to understand that these mental health facilities that were closed across the state, we need to reopen them. I agree with you.
John Taylor, followed by Ms. Mitchell.
So if I get muffled, but I just want to keep this really quick. Sheriff Labat, you talked about accountability, you talked about partnership, you talked about support. That is where we are. Black Male Initiative Fund, our network, our folks are committed to figuring out how to work together. So we're gonna do that. So yeah, we will tap in with you, but I want to be clear about the fact that what we want is an end to cash bail. What we want is an end to what we see as needless, senseless arrests for nuisance crimes and misdemeanors. And we do want to see more wraparound services, mental health support inside of the jails and the facilities. And we got deep concerns about all those folks who are sitting in the facilities for no other reason than they can't afford to pay to get out, right? So that's a real problem for us. So when we get back, we take this so serious. We're all on a delegation in South Africa right now on the phone with you because we wanted to make sure you knew we taking this serious. So when we get back home, we're gonna sit down and talk to you. We're gonna figure out how to work with you. But more importantly, we don't want to see no more brothers die in that jail. Bottom line.
I think you said it. Enjoy your trip to South Africa, and please let us know when you get back. Safe travels, and I'd love to have that conversation.
All right, Ms. Mitchell with the final question.
Thank you for taking time to address some of our questions and concerns, Sheriff Labat. It's been very informative, some of the information that has been shared. My only question or inquiry would be, have we reached out to possibly, departments within the city of Atlanta and or Fulton County as it relates to land banks that have buildings that are vacant right now that we could possibly transition some of those inmates to as a temporary facility that would help alleviate some of the overcrowding issues that you're encountering now?
So, and that's a really good question. Here's my approach though. Those individuals that are incarcerated are there and they've seen a judge, and the judge has made those decisions to either keep that individual in jail or not. There are some opportunities for wraparound services that ultimately, and even the ones that they're doing it at ACDC now in terms of expanding those services. So there are services there, but we have to keep in mind, and this is the tough part of the conversation, and that is the sheriff's office is solely responsible for care and custody and making sure these individuals get to and from court, understanding what that means on a holistic, from a holistic perspective with respect to really, we don't have a lot of jurisdictional opportunity to forego the judge's order and move forward. So I agree with you. There are opportunities that hopefully the Atlanta Land Bank and other areas can give, and I won't say give, let's say borrow, let borrow the facilities so that we can do some more things, right? It's interesting. There are a lot of people, and that's why I wish, I hope Mr. Taylor and I can connect when he gets back from South Africa. There are a lot of people say we have a lot of services, but then when the rubber meets the road, it's not so. It is, I have a grant to do this and I want to make some money, or it is, I have these services, but your individuals don't qualify. So there are a lot of opportunities. We just need to figure out what they look like. And so from the Atlanta Land Bank perspective, you still, that's, again, and I certainly will take that to the mayor and see what plans he has. I can pretty much assure you, and I don't speak for the mayor, but a lot of that stuff will center around youth services, right? He has declared the Year of the Youth. And so it is a wonderful opportunity for us to continue to move forward. So I appreciate it. I appreciate each and every one of you on the call. And if there's something I can do, we want to get better at it. And I look forward to continuing to serve our community and make sure that we are the #1 sheriff's office in the country. So Mr. Waller, I turn it back over.
I think Ms. Helen had one final comment, and then we'll move on to the next segment.
Well,
Let me just thank him after Helen. Helen, you go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I was going to turn it over to you, Molly. Sheriff Labat, would you thank you for taking the time to answer each person's questions. And I hope everyone has really realized that there are a lot of things that impact this criminal justice system. The cash bail has to be a public law that is passed by your elected officials so that he can implement that process. It's working with the DA's office, making sure the court system is working, having the right kinds of judges to move these cases along. But in terms of actual what happens to the inmates in the jail, that is within the purview of Sheriff Labat. But the problem is, again, there are other things that are compounding these problems. We really need to get at the root of why is there so much crime, and how can we get our community out of these situations so our people are not being arrested. And we know some of it's unjustified. We know that. But Sheriff, we appreciate you coming to talk to us, but we do, and I was one of the ones who was in support of the Atlanta Detention Center being repurposed as an all-encompassing social service agency to help with some of these problems that you're encountering in your jail, and rather than just putting them in jail and keeping them in jail for 9 years when they really haven't had a hearing. So it's those kinds of things that we are working toward, but it takes us all to work on all of them. We need the city of Atlanta to be in on this. We need the judicial system in on this. We need District Attorney Willis in on this so that we can have a total, Mayor Dickens needs to be in on this so we can have a total solution to all of these problems. But specifically though, with regards to the health of someone being killed by bugs, we have to have another method, Sheriff, of making certain that doesn't happen. And so we're willing to work with you. We think the Citizen Review Board is a great vehicle. We believe in it totally. It's an oversight process. It helps you. It takes some of that heat off of you because the people are really independent, looking at what's happening and can make recommendations as to what should happen. I know you don't agree with the Citizen Review Board, but we think they are very useful. I'm glad that you're working out an MOU so that that relationship can continue as it has in the past, so that people who have complained can get at least know that there's an outside body that's looking at this. But I do want to say that we all have to keep in mind that it's more than just Sheriff Labat.
That's right.
It's the city council, it's the mayor, it's the governor, it's the state attorney general, it's all of the judicial system that needs to be revamped so that we can get rid of all of these kinds of problems. I do hold Sheriff Labat accountable for the people that are housed at the facility, but the laws that put him there, he doesn't make them. So we got to work on those. I'm glad, Sheriff Labat, you have Brenda Clemens that's on with us today, and hopefully she'll be back with us to keep us abreast and be that liaison between you and the office, and we'll have you back as well. But we do thank you for coming and responding, but we do want answers for people that die within the facility and how that can happen and what you plan to do to stop that from happening in the future. So I'll turn it over to Reverend Motley.
Helen, I concur with everything that you've said. Every single syllable that you have uttered is in keeping with my sentiments as well. I see this situation as and the sheriff himself said it, a breakdown in the whole system. And everybody on this call knows that if I felt in any way that that the sheriff, that more drastic measures should be taken against the sheriff, I would be the first to say it. But having heard him lay it out in the conversations, every critical statement that was made, and this organization is known for having the finest social activist voices in the nation, and represented by the finest civil rights organizations under this umbrella. So thank God for you and the questions and the criticism even to the sheriff. But as Helen has stated, this problem is far greater than anything that the sheriff on a personal level, as it even relates to his office. And I'm convinced from what I've heard and from what he stated that he's a part of the solution and has sought in his administration to see to it that conditions and the commissioners have to be held very much responsible. And they're connected, as Helen said. All of these are connecting pieces and structures in the government. And even when the commissioners vote something in, monies have to be allocated. They are dealing with the city, they are dealing with the state, they are dealing with the mayor, they are dealing with the governor. And then, and so this is a huge dilemma. And let's not, and Brother Coleman, you're a tremendous advocate. I love you, and you're always on point. But let me just say, let's support this sheriff in getting the job done. We can be such a disposable society. And there are instances, of course, in which calling for someone's resignation is perfectly in order. I don't believe it is in this instance. I believe this sheriff is a part of the solution. Let's get behind him. Let's help him advocate for a much better. And someone said it, this is a third world situation, but he came into it. He's fighting to create the proper conditions for holding the proper people and not holding folk who have no business there, as Helen stated, in the first place, and others. So let's not feed into this disposable society where everybody is just fired at the drop of a hat, and heads got to roll and all that. Sometimes redemption is in order. There are times when, and we believe in redemption. We believe in forgiveness. We believe in another chance. There have been some folk, and this sheriff does not fit into that category, who are the nastiest, most disrespectful public servants you can imagine. And you know who the names who've come before us, and I, along with others, have no problem. In fact, I can't sit still in terms of going after them when they are out of order, when they're disrespectful of us who put them in office, and have the nerve to come before us after we elect them and disrespect us. It's the height of ingratitude and missing the mission of why we want African American public servants in office in the first place, so they can be different and better than the European Americans who've oppressed us across the years. So let's give this sheriff, this is my suggestion. Listen, some of you know more ins and outs about these matters than you've forgotten more than I'll ever know. All I know is that as a preacher, as a pastor, as a social activist, as a person who tries to utter prophetically to this generation, that there are times as horrible. I don't know of a more horrible situation than this. I say that readily, along with everyone else. I never heard of anything like this, in particular in this country, let alone. But he's our sheriff. He has demonstrated that he has a heart for the work. He has opened himself up to us today, given us this full hour and answered the questions diplomatically, fully. There are answers to be given, as to be sure, but he has been respectful in his in the way that he has comported himself with us today. It's a lot to be said for that. Being willing, and that's what our public servants are supposed to be, willing even to take a whooping from us sometimes when it's in order. He's done that today and apologized for what needed to be apologized for. That's the spirit of public service that I think we want from all of our public officials. I want to thank you, Sheriff, for making yourself available, first of all, to me. We've always had a good rapport with each other, but that had absolutely nothing to do with my position on these matters, everything to do with being grateful for our relationship across the years and for your responding positively to the invitation from myself, which was on behalf of Helen, on behalf of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. I work at their pleasure on this board and this incredible Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry founding organization. So God bless you, man. You got a task in front of you. We are praying for you. We want to work with you to make that facility a humane place where rehabilitation, not punishment, but rehabilitation can take place and transformation can take place. So God bless you. Thank you, Helen, for your stellar leadership. And every single person who made a comment, you are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, as Dr. Lowry always said. And on behalf of Pastor Milner, James Milner, I speak as well. So God bless. Back into your hands, Lyndon, and thank you again, Sheriff, and your team who has joined you today in addressing this critical matter.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I do want to say for the people that have been invited to work with the sheriff, please schedule that time. We will follow up with you to see when you got scheduled to go to see the sheriff's the facility and what you all came up with in terms of recommendations. We really want to hear that. So once you get your schedule made with the sheriff, please come back to us and report how and what happened, because we like to stay abreast of this. He gave an open invitation. We want you to take advantage of it, and please come back to us and let us know what can be done.
Can I make a suggestion that we do it as a delegation, Helen?
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Okay.
That's would that suit you, Marcus, John, and Miss B? I think were the three.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
I love it.
What
And
I will
I'll send
do,
a message, so count me in, please.
and Faye, And Faye? Okay,
Please,
so,
Faye needs to be a part of that, yeah.
okay. Was Tamara, were you a part of it too? No. Okay, so
No,
what I
ma'am.
will do
Helen,
then,
when we get back the week of the 19th, we absolutely can.
okay. After John gets back after the June the 19th, we'll schedule a delegation. I may not be able to be with you, but Lyndon will be my stead, going to that meeting with the sheriff's office, but I will be abreast of what's happening. So
I would
please,
like
thank
to be a
you.
part of it as well, Helen.
Okay,
all.
Reverend Motley, you got that, Lyndon? So
Thank you.
you got Faye, Ms. B, Marcus, Reverend Motley, and
And
John. Mhm.
You could add me too, Ms. Helen.
Minister, bless you.
Louis
Thank
Muhammad. So, okay, I think that's enough for right
Thank you
now,
all.
because you can't have so many people in that facility
Right.
at one time.
That's right.
I do understand for safety purposes. Am I not right, Sheriff?
Absolutely. Thank you all. I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
Thank you,
All
Sheriff.
right.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Lyndon,
you.
it's back to you. I gotta leave for another appointment, y'all. Love y'all.